Welcome to another episode of The Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters, and I am so glad you've decided to join us here on this fabulous little half hour where we're going to talk all things motorsports. Because on today's show, we have a lot of news to get to, especially since the NASCAR weekend in Talladega was this last weekend, and we've got them going to Texas, bringing the Cup, Xfinity, and Truck Series down to the Lone Star State. And then also, we've got some other races coming up this week. The Formula 1 Miami Grand Prix. IndyCar is in Barber. And we've also got some other races that are coming up here in the next couple of weeks. It's the month of May now, so we're going to be talking about Indy 500 preview stories and getting you ready for everything you need to know as the 109th Indianapolis 500 is coming up Sunday, May 25th. So, thank you guys for tuning in. If you like this show, remember to follow me on social media. You can do so by looking up at rpeeters33. That's RPEETERS 33. And then you can also make sure to download the WTHR Plus app for your smart TV so you can get new episodes of the Racing Report every single week that they premiere. So let's go ahead and get into the news of the week, starting off with Formula One. Now, last week we got a first look at the new venue for the Spanish Grand Prix circuit in Madrid that is set to come to life in 2026. The circuit will be a 22-turn, 3.35-mile road street course that also features a 24-degree banked turn called, quote-unquote, monumental. Now, top speeds are estimated at 211 miles an hour, so this is one fast racetrack. Plus, if you haven't seen the look, the simulator run so far that the Grand Prix released, I definitely recommend taking a look at it. Obviously, the simulator driver made some mistakes while driving, hit the wall, but still, overall, it gives you an idea of what the track is going to look like and how it might race. Now, as of now, this is something that's important to keep in mind. Spain has a contract for 2 Grand Prix in 2026, meaning that Barcelona and Madrid could each have one race next year. But we do know that we're going to this Barcelona street circuit, and it's going to be fast. It's going to be tricky. I'm going to be very curious to see how it races, though. That's going to be the big key. Now, speaking of racing and keeping tracks on the schedule, Mexico City Grand Prix will remain on the F1 schedule through at least 2028 after signing a new 3-year deal with Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. So we know that the Mexico City Grand Prix is going to stick around. When will IndyCar move to Mexico? Apparently that's supposed to happen next year, but we'll see. Anyway, now, as we talk about the final piece of Formula One news today, Kimi Antonelli will be the subject of a new Netflix documentary titled The Seat, and it'll be a 45-minute documentary that'll premiere on May 5th. And it'll feature private conversations between Mercedes team members on how they selected Antonelli as Lewis Hamilton's replacement. So you've got some new Formula One viewing if you want to do that after the Miami Grand Prix coming up here this weekend. So some big news there for Kimi Antonelli fans. You're going to get your own little documentary series that you're going to be able to watch. So some interesting news to keep up on there. But that is it for Formula One news. Let's go ahead and move on into the IndyCar world, because IndyCar has adjusted its practice format on road and street courses. And here's how it's going to work. The opening phase of the first practice session will be trimmed to 40 minutes. Previously, it was 45 minutes. But to make up for that, the second phase, where the field is split into 2 groups with the idea that they're going to be running mock qualifying runs during that time will be expanded to 12 minutes. So we will have some new practice or qualifying procedures going into Barber, so be aware of that if you're an IndyCar fan looking to watch that race. Now, as I talked about at the top of the show, it is the month of May now, and we had the Indy 500 Open Test this last week, and now we've got something interesting to talk about, because Kyle Larson says that he does not anticipate doing the double again until he finishes his NASCAR career so that he can, quote-unquote, fully commit to the Indy 500. So, if you're looking for Kyle Larson to run the double in 2026, unfortunately, it looks like it's not going to happen. You're going to have to look for another potential double participant. But hey, Larson says he hasn't written off doing it again. He just wants to do it when it's not the double so that he can really focus in on the Indy 500 and really kind of take everything in and not be so distracted with having to fly to Charlotte and having to balance time between North Carolina and Indianapolis. So, some very interesting news on that front in the IndyCar world. And also, we've got some Indy Next news. We don't always talk about Indy Next, but we do have some driver news in the Indy Next program because Bryce Aaron has moved from HMD Motorsports to Chip Ganassi Racing's Indy Next program, replacing Jonathan Brown in the number 9 for the remainder of the season. And HMD Motorsports has signed USF Championships race winner Ivorgas Papasavas as Aaron's replacement. Yeah, say that 12 times fast. But some driver change-ups that'll be happening in the Indy Next series. Remember, Sophia Flörsch also has left Indy Next, so it's going to be a quite different look to the Indy Next field in their next race at Barber compared to what we saw when they made their first race come back at St. Petersburg. So that is it for the American open wheel news. So let's talk about some supercars news. And yes, we don't go very far, even though we're going down under to discuss this. We are talking about Kyle Larson once again. This is very interesting news. This was posted on speedcafe.com. This was Kyle Larson. He has expressed interest in participating in the Supercar season finale in Adelaide. Now, that is the only Supercars race that falls outside of the NASCAR Cup Series season. Now, last year, organizers of the Grand Prix, of the race, had worked out a preliminary deal with Kyle Busch to potentially compete in the event, but unfortunately Busch had to pull the plug on that in August. But Chevrolet-backed Prema Air Racing has been linked as a possible wildcard entry for Larson. Though, keep in mind, nothing has been confirmed. This is just rumors right now. This is just Larson saying he wants to do it, and this is just, some people saying, well, we tried to get Kyle Busch last year, but hey, if Larson's open to do it, maybe we could do that. And Larson says he wants to do that because there's also a sprint car race at a dirt track that they built on an old cricket ground in Adelaide that he wants to race at. So we could see Kyle Larson come down under to race a supercars race after he's run the Indianapolis 500. He could run the Adelaide Grand Final. I'd be very curious to see how that would run. And I love the idea of Kyle Larson going out there and running a handful of different races, different racing series, especially at supercars. It's cool to see him in IndyCar, first of all, but then to go ahead and see him in potentially a supercar and a Chevrolet-backed supercar, I am very excited to see if that will come to fruition. So, as we mull on that, let's go ahead and take a quick break, because when we come back, we've got some NASCAR news to discuss, and believe me, it is not short by any means. So, don't go anywhere. We'll come back, and we'll talk about NASCAR news right here on The Racing Report. And welcome back to the Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters. It is time to discuss everything in the news and notes from NASCAR, because we had the Talladega weekend. We got a lot of fallout from that. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. And this is lawsuit related. Yes, lawsuits. We're talking about lawsuits again. North Carolina Superior Court has denied a preliminary injunction that would have prevented Rick Ware Racing from possibly selling the charter that Legacy Motor Club claims to have purchased. Now, in these court documents, it confirms that Legacy Motor Club purchased the charter that is currently used to field the number 51 car for Cody Ware for roughly $45 million, which would make it the largest price paid for a charter, a NASCAR charter, so far in the a little under 9 years that we've had this system going. So $45 million is the reported sale price. But what's also interesting in here to note is that court documents also say that Rick Ware Racing and RFK Racing have a deal in place to lease out the charter for next year. So that 51 car is expected to be leased out to RFK Racing so that they could run a fourth car. But then here you got Legacy Motor Club saying, no, we bought that charter so that we could run a third car. Well, now what happens to Rick Ware Racing? Do they get out of NASCAR entirely? What do they do? I don't know. Do they run Cody Ware unchartered, which would be a very bold decision, especially since that's a guaranteed starting spot for your driver? I don't know where that comes. It'll be very interesting to see what new what new developments come out as we continue to follow this. So stay tuned with the Racing Report, because as more information comes out about this and other NASCAR lawsuits, we will indeed keep you updated. But for now, let's go ahead and move into the next piece of news, because it's a kind of a big bummer for Connor Zilisch fans, as he will not race at Talladega this weekend after he injured his back during a last lap crash at Talladega. Kyle Larson will indeed instead replace him in the number 88 Chevrolet for Junior Motorsports this weekend at Texas. So with a couple of weeks off until the Charlotte race for the Xfinity Series, they're hoping that maybe missing Texas will help Zilisch recover a little bit faster. But again, that all remains to be seen. Hopefully he does make a full recovery so he can race at Charlotte. But right now we know he's not been cleared to drive at Texas. And meanwhile, speaking of big hits at Talladega, if you watched the Cup race over the weekend, you might have seen Christopher Bell have a very, very violent accident, just about as violent as Connor Zilisch's, except Zilisch's happened further down on the backstretch, whereas Christopher Bell's happened a little bit further up, and he hit a angled wall that's at the end of Talladega. Now, NASCAR on Hauler Talk, their weekly podcast, they put out they basically said, hey, we're going to fix that. We're going to actually, by the time the cars come back to Talladega for the fall, that's going to be fixed. It's not going to be at an angle anymore. We're going to move it out. So hopefully that if the car hits there, it's not going to be a major impact. Hopefully. I mean, it'll still probably be a big impact, but hopefully not as bad as it has been with that angled out. So now let's talk about this other piece of news. This is very, very peculiar, I guess. Now, we don't usually talk about golf because this is a racing show, but the PGA Tour, the golf sanctioning body in North America and in most of the world, is reportedly eyeing NASCAR Commissioner Steve Phelps for its opening at CEO, and they want him. They are actively pursuing him and trying to get him to be their CEO. Now, he was just recently named commissioner. So we're talking about, I mean, I saw a comment from somebody earlier saying, when did NASCAR have a commissioner? Yeah, that's how soon and how recently that title has been given to Steve Phelps. And now already the PGA Tour is looking to poach him as their new CEO. Now, Steve Phelps has not commented on this, so this could be a lot of hearsay. But it is very interesting to see that other sporting series are looking at NASCAR people as potential CEOs and commissioners and things like that. So I don't know if Steve Phelps will take this job, but it'll definitely be something to monitor here in the next couple of months. Now, let's get into our last piece of NASCAR news, because it's a lot, and I'd like to talk about it for quite some time, because NASCAR reportedly proposed a quote-unquote run what you brung style of all-star race to the teams, but those teams rejected it, citing cost concerns. Now, Denny Hamlin, on his Actions Detrimental podcast, basically alluded and said, you know, if we did this, it would be a lot more expensive for us, because again, it is an all-star race, it is an exhibition race, it's not a normal points paying race. There's the way the money and the prize payout is different, and he's worried, you know, hey, we would bring a completely experimental car and we could destroy it and not have any use for it later. That is a very honest possibility. Also, I think the number one thing that drivers and teams kind of pushed back on having this one run what you brung, where it kind of makes sense that it would be cost prohibitive, because think about it, when you think about open Formula spec series, kind of like Formula One, or even, you know, late 90s kart era, where you had a formula, but you had, you know, different chassis manufacturers. You could do a lot more, even late 90s, early 2000s NASCAR. You could do a lot more with the cars, and you could try different things, whereas nowadays you're kind of restricted on what you can really try. But that was a really expensive time for the sport, and I think as many of us probably want to see that era come back, and as fans we're probably upset that, hey, why isn't NASCAR doing this? This is exactly what we'd want. I think it would have been beneficial and more beneficial for NASCAR to just say, all right, here's what we're going to do with this car on this track. We're going to take out the rear diffuser. We're going to take out the underbody. We're going to replace that, and we're going to maybe mess around with the spoiler, mess around with some of the horsepower. Maybe we can see what this can do, and maybe, you know, I'd be curious to see what that would actually look like if NASCAR maybe said, okay, no, we're going to actually do these radical changes that teams have been talking about doing to short track racing and implement them in the All-Star race. I think that would have been a much better idea than a run what you brung, because I don't know that run what you brung would be all that exciting. I think you wouldn't have as much parity as maybe you'd be looking for. Yes, on some hand, I think some fans and teams and drivers miss that, but at the same time, I think if you're trying to put on a show for an all-star race, you should be trying different things. You should be trying to give fans a reason to tune into this specific race, and I think an option for that would be to say, hey, look, we are doing completely radical changes to this next-gen car to try and see how it's going to race on a short track, and this is going to be, our real test run, and we'll see. I would like to see him throw 750 horsepower, 800 horsepower in these cars. Take those underbody, those sealed underbodies off. Take that rear diffuser off. Maybe mess with some of the spoilers. That maybe give them a little more, less drag, depending on where you think you need to go. I would like to see that, but it doesn't look like we're going to get that either. So it looks like the All-Star race coming up here in a couple of weeks is just going to be run just like other races in NASCAR regarding short tracks. And that is what it is. But definitely something to keep a look for as we go to North Wilkesboro for the NASCAR All-Star race coming up here in a couple of weeks. Now, that is it for the NASCAR news of the show. When we take a break, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to recap the NASCAR weekend at Talladega, and we're going to get you ready for all the races that are coming up this weekend, because believe me, there's a lot of them. It's May, and that means it's motorsports time. Lots of racing series coming on. Racing over the weekend, and we're going to keep you updated on what races to watch this weekend. So, don't go anywhere. You are watching The Racing Report. And we're back on The Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters. Let's recap the NASCAR weekend in Talladega, because it was one for the record books and one for the history books. Just depends on how you feel about putting them in what history book. Good history, bad history. Anyway, let's start off with the ARCA series. It was a decent ARCA race at Talladega. Not too crazy, also not too boring, just like last year where Jake Finch led every single lap. This race we actually had some lead changes. We actually had some fun things, but Lawless Allen scored his first ever ARCA race win, or maybe not his first ever, but one of his first races in the NASCAR Premier Series, or not Premier Series, but in the NASCAR Touring Series. And then Thad Moffitt, grandson of Richard Petty, finishing second, and Isabella Robusto with a really good run there in third. And then, hey, Cletus McFarland, he got a top 10 finish. If you do not know who Cletus McFarland is, he's a very popular YouTuber with on there, and he races a lot of different cars, does a lot of different racing events, does a lot of charitable events, and now he's running a handful of ARCA races. He ran at Daytona, and he said he was excited to come here and run at Talladega. And what does he get to do? Well, he wrecked out at Daytona, but he finishes in the top 10 at Talladega. But here's the thing we got to talk about is there were some post-race penalties levied in the ARCA series, and two of them were hit by Thad Moffitt and Isabella Robusto for technical infractions. And then, of course, Cletus McFarland, he was fined $5,000 and placed on probation for the rest of the year for his second violation of personal safety equipment. So if you're watching the ARCA race, you might have seen, right before the race started, an in-car camera of Cletus McFarland. He's trying to get his Hans device on. Yeah, well, he walked into the car without the Hans device. That is a safety issue. That is a penalizable safety issue. And ARCA obviously took the proper steps to make sure that protocol is being adhered to, but didn't pamper him that much, because at least he got to keep his top 10 finish. So that's the ARCA race for you. Meanwhile, in the Xfinity Series, again, Austin Hill is inevitable on these super speedway races. So I mean, at this point, I don't know what to say. It's just Austin Hill just gets so... He's always in the right place in the right time. You can't even really call it luck. I guess you could call it luck, but you also have to just be in awe at the fact that he's literally in the right place at the right time, seemingly every time he needs to be, especially at a super speedway race. Like, yeah, okay, he lucked into that one at Martinsville, but definitely lucked into this one this weekend, too, at Talladega. Just a lot of crazy stuff, but it was a last lap kind of finished. So obviously coming into turn three, excuse me, on the last lap, you had Connor Zilic have that accident where he did injure his back. A very vicious accident. You could see the safer barrier, just how much it gave under impact. Thankfully, he was able to get out under his own power, but unfortunately, he is sidelined for this weekend at Texas. But we got this kind of three wide-ish photo finish where you're looking at when did the caution flag fly and who was ahead, and NASCAR determined that it was Austin Hill who was ahead of Jeb Burton. Jeb Burton kind of disputed it. I understand why he disputed it. I think you look at a bunch of different angles. One angle maybe looks like Jeb has it. Another angle, couple more angles maybe look like Austin Hill had it. But ultimately, it was decided that Austin Hill was the race winner. And Jeb Burton comes up as a bridesmaid once again. I know he was disappointed by that, but I'm sure he'll get that win soon. He's won at Talladega before, but I think he would have liked to get that race win, at the very least, not under green flag conditions, but not under rain conditions like I think he got his most recent Talladega victory. Now let's talk about the Cup race, because the Cup race was interesting. If you watch the Cup race, you're probably sitting here thinking like, well, I've never missed a Talladega race. It's Talladega. You can't not watch Talladega. How could you call yourself a NASCAR fan and not watch Talladega? Well, have you seen Jeff Gluck's good race poll lately? It is no bueno. It is quite low for an average Talladega race. And that's because fans were really not too keen on the style of racing that we got. Yeah, we got a lot of side-by-side racing, but we also didn't really get a lot of passing. It looked like there was a lot of gridlock going on, especially leading into the final laps, where, you spent the last 10 or so laps, which, by the way, when Fox decided to take a side-by-side commercial with 9 to go, which I said on my podcast, if you haven't listened to it, Robin Roller, at Robin Roller, you should probably take a listen to that. You'll hear more of my thoughts on this. But Fox seemingly sold advertising space during the final 20 laps. I have no idea why they did that, but they did that. And so as a result, we got with 9 to go, we took a side-by-side break, and then we came back with 5 to go. 4 or 5 to go. That is, in my opinion, in all broadcasting, that's unacceptable, especially when you look at the CW. CW was green flag full screen for the entire 9-10 laps, but Fox couldn't do that. But anyway, as you watch those last several laps, possibly, most likely, in the side-by-side by Fox, you probably noticed just how hard it was. Nobody was really making moves. Nobody was really able to pull out of line, and I think a lot of that is just because drivers know that if you pull out of line and you don't have any help, you are a sitting duck. You are going to bleed speed. That's what Dale Jr. described it as, bleeding speed. And I liked that kind of analogy a little bit, as bleeding speed, because I think that is exactly what happens. You think you're going to pull out and you hope that somebody goes with you, but in the event that nobody goes with you, you are a sitting duck. And I understand that has been the case for superspeedway racing for a very long time. But now it feels like you have less opportunities to get runs and really make spots back if you pull out a line too early and say nobody goes with you. You could go all the way to the back with, like, say, 5 to go, and then maybe get hooked up with somebody and start coming back on the outside. It's not impossible. It's not something that hasn't been done before, but it definitely looked really, really hard to do on Sunday. Now, seems like Elton Sawyer, again, NASCAR, he spoke with SiriusXM NASCAR Radio and said that they didn't see a problem with the racing, saying, oh, look at all these lead changes. We had all these lead changes. What's the problem with it? Well, quality of racing is not good. You can't really move around. Drivers can't really make moves. It's really kind of lost the level of skill needed to really do well in these super speedway races. And Steve Phelps not Steve Phelps, but Elton Sawyer and people up in NASCAR say, we don't see anything wrong. We see a lot of competition, a lot of lead changes, lots of passing, whereas fans are kind of sitting here being like, what race are you watching? I would hate to agree with the fans, but I think the fans are right here. What race are they watching? I don't know. But I don't think we were watching the same race, that's for sure. So, but anyway, let's talk about the finish to that. Austin Cindric beat Ryan Preece to the line in a photo finish. Ryan Preece, however, was disqualified after the race along with Joey Logano. Austin Cindric, of course, no penalties. He passed. He keeps his race victory, but the second place finisher of Ryan Preece, who almost won that race, is disqualified alongside Joey Logano. Logano was missing a bolt. A bolt. That was the difference between him finishing fifth and dead last. Racing giveth and racing taketh away. But it's kind of karma, I guess, because Logano was not happy with the way Ryan Blaney raced during stage 2, saying, oh, he gave this stage win to a Toyota. Oh, this, how could this happen? Why did you do this? Again, I think a lot of it is just because these drivers are approaching this super speedway race a lot differently than they used to, just because of the package. If NASCAR ends up actually changing the package, which doesn't seem like they're going to, maybe you'll see this kind of problem go away, but right now I don't think that's going to happen. I think you're going to still see this kind of 2x2 gridlock, maybe 3x3, maybe 4x4, but a lot of it's going to be gridlock. You're not going to see a lot of passing. A lot of it's going to be done under fuel saving. And some people don't like the fuel saving. Some people don't like drivers running single file in a freight train. Honestly, you got to pick your battles sometimes with this, and I'm nervous because you did see a little bit of a ratings drop with Talladega, but again, still 4 million viewers on Big Fox is not something to balk at. But again, I think fans are not happy with the way this next-gen car is racing on super speedways and short tracks. So obviously, I think we're in for a better race this weekend at Texas, but as we get closer and closer, I think the All-Star race is going to be a big question mark before we get to the Coca-Cola 600, which likely will again be a good race, as we've seen a lot of really, really good races with this next-gen car on mile and a halfs, just not really on any other type of racetrack, unfortunately. All right. Now, speaking of that, that is a great way to segue into the next segment of our coming up. We've got NASCAR, Xfinity, NASCAR Cup, Xfinity, and Trucks all in Texas this weekend. We're looking forward to that. It'll be a triple header weekend there. Curious to see how another Texas race runs. I mean, Texas has been, again, a bit of an anomaly since they went ahead and changed the banking in turns 1 and 2 several years ago, and it really affected the IndyCar race, and that's probably why we're not going there. The IndyCar race is never coming back, unfortunately, as much as I hate to say that. I thought I'd never say that. I hoped I'd never say that. I always wanted that race to be a bucket list race I got to see, and unfortunately I never got to see it. But maybe the Cup cars will put on a good show for the fans in Texas. I think that they will. Xfinity, remember last year? Probably the closest finished with Sam Mayer beating Ryan Sieg. I know a lot of people were probably disappointed to see Ryan Sieg not win that race, but it was still a thrilling finish, so maybe we'll get another one this year in either the truck or the Xfinity race, Cup race. Who knows? We'll find out. Then IndyCar, they're coming back after a couple weeks off where they were in Long Beach. Now they're coming back, and they are in Barber for the Indy Grand Prix of Alabama. Also coming back is the Indy Next series, as we talked about. That's going to look a little bit different. But they're finally coming back after a couple of weeks off. Remember, they didn't go to Thermal Club, they didn't go to Long Beach, they didn't go any of those places. But they are coming back here at Barber, and they'll be again in a couple of weeks at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course as well. Now, let's also discuss Formula One's coming back, and they're going to be stateside this weekend. They're bringing the F1 Academy to Miami Gardens for the Miami Grand Prix. Very curious to see how that goes. Has Red Bull improved? Like they've said, Helmut Marko said they expect to be improved by Imola, but man, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what they do. We'll see also how McLaren, if Lando Norris can defend his crown at the Miami Grand Prix. I'm very curious to see how all of this goes, and I'm also very curious to see how that F1 Academy race is going to go, because it's a long track for these F1 Academy cars, and I'm kind of curious to see how they're going to race and how they're going to run. I mean, they raced there last year. The W Series is raced there as well. So you kind of get an idea, but I'm still going to be watching for that, because that, I think, will be an interesting race. But again, that race will be on linear over-the-air TV. So again, you've got a lot of races on over-the-air. You've got IndyCar on Fox. You've got NASCAR Xfinity Series on the CW. You've got Formula One on ABC. That'll be pretty cool. But hey, also, something that you're going to be wanting to check out is Formula E. They've got a doubleheader coming up in Monaco, and I've said this for years. I've said, if you're not a fan of Monaco, if you think, oh, Formula One cars shouldn't be at Monaco, the race is boring, it's processional, the track is not good anymore, watch Formula E in Monaco. You will not regret it. And it's a doubleheader, so you have two opportunities to watch two great looking races. Now, keep in mind, these Formula E cars, they're a lot smaller than the F1 cars, and they will run the entire Monaco course. They don't run the shortened course. I remember 10 years ago when they first started running Formula E races at Monaco, they did run a little bit of a shortened course. This year, and since for the last several years, they've been running the full course, and it's been a cracker of a race. I highly recommend checking at least one of the races out. You won't regret it. Plus, they've got that new pit boost. If you haven't checked that out, that is something to check out for sure, because it's kind of like taking attack mode and mixing it in with a pit stop. So basically, these guys now, they come down pit road, and if you haven't seen this, they will literally, a team member will literally stick a charger into the rear of that car, and they will get an extra like 15 or something kilowatts of power that they can then use, and that serves as kind of like their attack mode, but it also serves as basically a pit stop. And it's created for some really interesting strategy in Formula E, and I'm really curious to see how it'll play out in Monaco, because they'll be able to pass. They'll actually be able to pass on this track. They have been able to pass. So now you enter in pit strategy, with that includes getting basically a turbo boost as a result. Man, I just can't wait to see what these races are going to produce. So definitely be looking to watch those races this weekend. And then as we look ahead to next week, we've got a couple of races next week as well. Supercars will return. They'll be in Tasmania at Symmons Plains. That's one of my favorite racetracks down under, is that Symmons Plains racetrack. I think it's one of the coolest and most treacherous but fast racetracks that they go to, and that'll be interesting. It'll be a Super 440 event as well, so be looking for that. And then also we'll have IMSA return in a couple of weeks' time at Laguna Seca. There's 36 cars in the entry list for that. We do know that. That was published earlier in the week. So a lot of races coming up, and then in 2 weeks' time, coming up here, we'll have Super Formula. They'll be in Autopolis, so that's when the next Super Formula race is. So if you're ready for that, that'll be fun if you're a Supercars fan, because again, or Super Formula fan, excuse me, we've got a real close points battle after the first 4 rounds. So be ready for that. So that is it for this episode of the Racing Report. We really appreciate you tuning in. Again, be sure to download that WTHR Plus app on your smart TV so you can get new episodes of the Racing Report every time they are released. And be sure to follow me on social media at rpeters33 so that you can find out when new episodes drop, and also just really whenever I'm posting about. I'll be at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway this month of May, tweeting out live updates and stories coming up, so you'll want to follow for that at the very least. But for WTHR Plus, my name is Rob Peeters, and this has been the Racing Report.